we are here with Hanif Ismail, Vice President of Product Management for NetSuite HCM, as well as Andrew Gaunt, NetSuite Director of Product Management. And I feel a little left out here, guys. Thanks for giving me the blue memo.
We thought you knew, Kendall.
I didn't get the memo at all. That makes sense that you would leave me out.
I mean, you have all these other colors. Maybe blue could have been one.
I know, I wish. Okay, Hanif.
Yeah.
Really exciting news to come out of SuiteWorld this year around SuitePeople Workforce Management. So excited to hear it. But first, we need to talk to people. You know I always ask you this question, but we might have some viewers on here that have not heard of SuitePeople, they're prospects, thinking about it. Can you tell everybody what is SuitePeople?
So that's a good point. So SweetPeople is our human capital management software, and it's the HCM line for NetSuite, if you will. So it has a couple of key components. One is we have a full service-based payroll solution, specifically for the US market. We also have an HR administration solution. This is where customers can kind of get all their disparate data that they have about their employees, their talent, consolidated into one solution, and that's our HR administration solution. We also have workforce management, which is the announcement we made today. And then we have also talent management capabilities like performance management. We have that as well. And then we have a rich set of analytics capabilities as well.
Wow.
Well, let's get on to the new stuff.
Yeah,
let's talk about
fun stuff.
Let's do like a recap of SuitePeople Workforce Management. What does it give our NetSuite customers?
Yeah, it's actually a really deep, fantastic solution in the sense of, the example I was using today with the restaurant industry as an example, right? It's really being able to help you balance and optimize your shift schedules for employees that are hourly employees in terms of a lot of customers will do it on spreadsheets and disparate systems. This brings it all together into one solution so that what you're able to do is look at what is my optimized shift schedule that I should have based on what my customer demand is going to look like.
Right.
And that actually comes from NetSuite, from our sales systems. So that's part of the benefit of something like this. But it also has capabilities around then time clocks. So now, clocking people in, clocking people out, capturing the exact time that they've worked, so to speak, right? It has also a rules-based engine which allows us to automate overtime calculations based on federal laws as well as state laws, and then as well as company policies. And right now, you'd have to do it manually with us, but now with this solution, it'll automate a lot of that for them as well.
Yeah.
And then it has capabilities for the employees as well, where it gives them a lot more visibility and control over their, if you will, their schedules and so forth as they need it.
Now, I think you hit on a couple of these big ones, but Andrew, let's summarize this. What are some of the big challenges that businesses face when dealing with hourly waged employees?
Yeah, I think there's probably really two key challenges. And the first one was alluded to by Hanif around scheduling just the right amount of people to meet your business goals. And one of the parts of that being the biggest challenge is you need so many different data points from various different systems that often for a lot of people don't talk to each other.
Yeah.
And you need to pull that together, so from ERP, manufacturing systems, and your pick, pack, ship numbers, your sales forecasts and demands. Then you need to build your schedule to that, and you need your HR information around your employees. What jobs are they doing? Their wage rates to understand what the cost of those shifts will be. And all of that is just to get a plan right.
Yeah.
Then you need to monitor to that plan, and you need to see your actuals. How many hours are we at this week? And that data needs to be coming in real time so that you can pivot and react to it to meet your business goals.
Right.
And customers just don't have that ability of synthesizing that information to make decisions in the moment that they need to.
Right.
And the second other problem is just paying your hourly workforce. There's a lot more steps than a salaried employee. You've got to get accurate clock time that we talked about, missed punches. You've got to also ensure that you're calculating the overtime, you're chasing people to approve those hours. So there's a lot of manual steps that have to happen in that flow of your payroll cycle, which is every 2 weeks, every week. So it's a hardship for customers to do that consistently, and if you're getting someone's pay wrong, it's a real problem for your employees.
Huge problem.
Very big.
Yeah.
And this kind of brings me to something we actually asked Evan about when we had Evan on. I think we brought it up a little bit with Gary, but this is a tedious, time-consuming and manual process a lot of times, but it's a huge process and it's a big deal.
Yeah.
Why don't businesses handle this like earlier? Why isn't this automated? Why aren't people getting on top of it faster?
Yeah, I think it's a couple of things, but I think the major thing is that, as companies grow, they feel the pain even more, if you will, right? So I think that's part of the cycle, if you will. And they usually start with spreadsheets, and they start from that kind of thing, and then they add maybe a point system there, and then they add a separate point system and another point system, and then it starts getting out of control, and they go, but I need this data with this.
Right.
And I need this data with this, and it's not all pulled together, and that's when they say, okay, we're growing up, we need another system.
Absolutely. And you kind of hit on this already again, but on the employee side, what are the benefits for employees? What are employees looking for? We heard visibility and control over their schedule. Anything else you want to hit on when it comes to that?
Yeah, I think just, aside from that, I would just say intuitive, something that's intuitive, easy to use. Because when they're looking for visibility, what's my schedule like? Oh, I need to change my shift. Something that gives them really intuitive interface that could go in there on the mobile because they're always on the run and be able to, change something pretty quickly. Once they clock in and clock out, and if they don't agree with the timestamps, then they also have the opportunity to dispute that and challenge that kind of thing. But it's all embedded into the phone. And it's kind of collaborative in that case, right? So it's not like you have to go offline and work it through. Well, it's comfortable, do it there and ask the question.
Yeah.
And I think you guys kind of touched on this a little bit in talking about how it pulls from the rest of the suite, but in addition to removing the manual processes and making things easier, what makes this unique?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. I'd say the first thing that makes it unique is kind of what we're touching on right now, I think, right? Which is the fact that it's a unified suite. That's the piece, because you don't have all these disparate pieces that you have to tie together. In this case, it's all consolidated. I need sales data to be able to create that initial demand of what's my customer demand going to look like before I create that schedule, if you will. So it's all tied together because of the benefit of the suite. The other example was even the absences that you capture in SuitePeople HR. That's leveraged in here as well. So you don't schedule somebody for a shift when they're not going to be there, right? So that's the real value. That's the major value that comes out of this. The other thing that I was talking about before was, which is a clear differentiator, is the ability to be able to include forecast in there as well as to what's that customer demand look like. Now, I use the example of restaurants, right? But in this case, the demand could also be the number of widgets I need to build for manufacturing, as an example.
Right. Well, sticking with that for a second, you guys were talking about the restaurants. You talked about that on stage as well. What other industries stand to benefit from this?
Yeah. I would say any time clock-based industries, any industry that has hourly workforce that actually needs to use time clocks to clock people in and out and capture that level of detail, it would apply to that. But that includes things like manufacturing. It would include, retail industry, hospitality for sure, right? Warehouse distribution as well. So there's no, it applies horizontally across those industries for that need where it's a time clock-based need.
Andrew, any special requirements for customers to use this?
No, any NetSuite customer can take advantage of it. You don't need to have SuitePeople already in order to utilize this. However, having said that, to really realize the full value and the streamlined processes, having SuitePeople payroll and HR would be ideal.
Yeah.
Got it.
I actually do want to hit on that. What is the benefit? We talked about what SuitePeople is. We talked about workforce management. What is the benefit of really leveraging the full SuitePeople suite? And then what is the benefit of also tying SuitePeople to the rest of NetSuite ERP? Yeah,
absolutely. So whether it's within the SuitePeople capability footprint or with SuitePeople with NetSuite ERP, we've already kind of alluded to the challenges that businesses spend a tremendous amount of effort and money trying to tie together these systems through integrations. Now, when you've got all of that put together, you can eliminate all the needs of that, but your people information is useful in so many places within ERP, just as well as the ERP information is very useful within your people side. So that sharing of information is really important. The other aspect, I think, some examples of that are sort of your single view finance and HR of your payroll expense, which is typically your largest expense line.
Yeah.
Also, when we talk about PTO, that's coming in as a liability that finance gets a single view of. And while talking about PTO, paid time off, you've got your projects and PSA that use that information for availability when you're doing resource scheduling, the scheduling application that we just talked about. In our performance, we're able to leverage goals that can tie people's work effort with data right directly from the suite to automatically populate goal progress. So there's so many synergies between your people and what they do in the business that it just makes sense to put all that together.
Yeah.
I wanted to pick up on a couple of things from the keynote and some of your comments there. One of them was the real-time nature of this. So you talked about the forecasting before, and I was mentioning this in an earlier discussion. I was thinking about forecasting as something, on the horizon, not something real time. Talk about how that comes into play in workforce management. Where are companies getting the benefit from something real time?
So it's two perspectives, right? The first is when you plan your schedule. So you build that schedule. You'll build it based on a forecast that says our projections for sales, as an example, is X, Y, and Z, and you lay that out. So then you build a schedule according to that. Then your mode switches to real time. What's happening today, right? So when it switches to real time, one of the things that I showed was the dashboard, the operational dashboard that the manager looks at every single day and is working towards that. And you're able to track things like sales. And you're saying, oh, my sales are starting to exceed what our original forecast was. And before we had planned for X amount of labor hours.
Right.
Now things are changing and sales seems to be going really high. Oh, maybe there's a conference. Maybe the NetSuite conference is going on. And that's just skyrocketing our sales. And we didn't plan for that before. Right. So, okay, make sure we get more, either bring in more staff to cover for it or extend people that are actually still working right now and extend their number of hours and cover it that way. So that's not a proactive thing because proactive was you built the plan, right? Now you're more in reaction, but you need the right tools to be able to react effectively. Because you always want to keep in mind is as you make these decisions, what's the impact to the business, right? Because your metrics that we showed, you want to keep your eye on those metrics because at the end of the day, you're in it to make a profit.
Well, let's talk about that for a second because this was a little surprising thing that I saw in your demonstration on stage that I thought was really cool. So if you have a labor percentage target, you can see what, this is about to go into overtime. It's going to affect, the percent of sales, labor's percent of sales. So now we're tying it back to the bottom line. Right?
That's right. That's right. And that's really important. And that's why, we were talking about the overtime rules engine, right? That helps you calculate that up front so you know what the overtime impact is going to be. And then you can decide whether that is acceptable or not based on your business goals and the metrics that you're trying to hit.
And the visibility of those metrics is real time throughout all the processes. As I'm making changes in my plan, the metrics are updating. When I go ahead to execute that particular schedule or plan, during the day, as hours are being clocked, as sales are coming in, I can see in real time what's happening to make those changes. If you don't have that information and insights at that time, you're waiting until month end. And that's a long feedback loop to try to fix any problems you might have. This is happening day after day, giving you really great predictability in hitting the targets you want.
And is that capability, that looking at the percentage of the labor percentage of sales, inherent just in workforce management, or is that part of all of SuitePeople and the integration with NetSuite?
I guess a couple of perspectives. You may have a different one too. So one is certainly it's available in workforce management as you saw. But the data that supports that, first of all, comes from across the suite.
Exactly. Yeah.
Some data comes from HR, some data comes from payroll, right? So it's, if you will, it's the sweetness, which Gary was talking about today, right? It's bringing all of that content together from a unified suite that allows us to do something like that. Now, across the suite, we would also look at labor costs and so forth. So there's different dimensions to it, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And you're looking at the same values. So someone's looking at it on a day basis or a week basis, and they're looking at that number. Someone else is stepping back in their NetSuite dashboard and looking at that same number, but over a longer period of time. So you're always working on the same items.
Right.
Good point.
And I have an additional, so we're talking, and I'm very appreciative, and I know our customers are too, talking about how this impacts the bottom line, right? But one thing that we haven't discussed yet today is one of the big kind of themes that we've heard over the past couple of years is employee retention and talent retention. What impact is first of all, simplifying, creating greater automation in these things, any the talent management side of things, all of that. How does that help in employee retention right now?
I'll give you a prime example. There's a restaurant near where I live, and I won't name it obviously, but there's a restaurant there that I won't be happy about.
They haven't paid for ad time yet.
I go there all the time, and they treat me well, so we'll keep it that way.
There you go.
But they have been going through a massive amount of challenges in the sense of that the staff is changing a lot. They complain, at least from what I've heard and what they've told me, and I've been talking to the waiters and so forth, and they don't know exactly when they're working, they don't know what shifts they're on. Things are changing so much that they don't get that visibility on an ongoing basis. So am I on tomorrow? Am I on the next day? What's the plan here? Give me some foresight so I can plan my own life, so to speak, right? And they don't have some of that, and that can get very frustrating. In fact, they've been seeing a lot of turnover as a result of that as well.
Right.
Yeah.
So I mean, the tools with workforce management give that visibility and control to the employees. Yeah. So you're working different shifts all the time, week after week. Having your schedule come out, knowing exactly where you need to go to understand what's happening is a big, huge benefit to those employees. They have that visibility. If they need to shift swap or something, they have that capability. So they have elements of control. They can review their pay before pay comes out. If there's any issues with, hey, I actually worked an extra half hour, the manager and them can sort that out, and they know they're getting paid. So they've got stability, visibility, and control, and that really helps get them engaged in the business and keep them there.
And one other aspect of that, I would imagine, that we kind of haven't touched on is just the biometric part of the clocking, right? So making it easier, less friction on the employee.
So with the biometrics, essentially, so the
fingerprint
intent for that, the fingerprint piece, the intent of that is to prevent, if you will, if you're concerned about somebody punching in for somebody else.
Right, sure.
Right? So it's called buddy clocking.
Sure.
So if you're concerned about something like that, then you'll use either the fingerprint scanning, or you would also, the other alternative is, so the tablet that we showed where the person clocks in and clocks out on.
Right.
So what you can also do is, as I punch in my PIN number, it'll capture my picture.
Yeah.
It'll be on file. If there's ever a question whether Hanif actually clocked in or not, or did Andrew clock in for him, they can go back into the records and be able to take a look at that.
Yeah,
right?
Sure.
So pretty powerful stuff. And depending on the industry you're in, and depending on the size, and depending on the concerns that you might have, you may need to deploy something like that. The good thing is that there are options.
Yeah. So you're not going to be able to ask me to clock in for you anymore. All those days that you've had me punch in and punch out for you, gone.
Gone.
Done.
What if I give you? What if I
share the
What if I give you my thumb?
As long as I get to cut it off.
A little paper slicer.
We're going there now, are we?
Exactly,
We're at that point in the show. One of the other things that we've been talking about here, one of the common themes is efficiency and time savings.
Right.
One of the things that you showed in the demo is the automatic the schedule approval, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Auto-match. What's that?
Auto-match.
Auto-match, right?
Yeah.
So it's I mean, that's got to be a big time savings for companies too.
It is. I mean, imagine going through, you've got 20, 30 people working that shift or whatever it might be, and you got to go through each one manually and say, yeah, did this person work that shift or not? And this now just goes through and automatically, if the timesheet that you submitted matches the schedule that was predefined, then within a certain grace period, because you might be 5 minutes late or 10 minutes late and something like that, and that's configurable, automatically goes through. You don't have to touch it. And now you just deal with the exceptions.
Yeah.
Right.
So much easier, a lot of savings in time.
What about employees who don't work the full hours?
That'll be an exception also.
You want to go there?
We're going there now.
Andrew, I know so many of our customers are going to be so excited to learn about this. So how can they learn more about SuitePeople Workforce Management?
Great question. We've got the demo pods here at SuiteWorld. Also coming up, a webinar in
There's a webinar
October.
in October,
Yep.
so there'll be other series of webinars.
The website is now up to date with all the new information, so they can go there and, of course, talk to your account rep.
Yep, absolutely.
Yep.
Well, this was amazing. Thank you guys for such great insight. Really, again, just
pleasure.
really great innovation here, really great functionality that we're adding to the suite, and just thank you guys for the time.